All right. Hello and welcome to your regularly scheduled Spike Colony podcast. I am here with your irregular co-hosts, Michael J. Flores, and I'm Lanny Huang.
Well, here we are. I don't know when the last time this was.
About 3 weeks ago now. I wanted to...
Is that it? I feel like it was infinity ago.
It does feel
like we had like Lan and Rich and Roland and SWB and
well, you played a lot of Magic.
One of us.
Played a lot of Magic while I was gone. Just wanted to start the podcast with a quick note that we were very saddened by the news of the passing of Jens Jerger. I actually woke up that morning in Germany on German time to sort of find out, and it was pretty shocking news. The last time I saw him was obviously at LobsterCon, and I think there was always this feeling of he did the interview in Monster of the Week, and it was just like, he's so busy, he doesn't get a chance to say hi or talk to anyone, talk to everyone that wants to talk to him. And I kind of was like, I didn't get to talk to Jens, but I'm sure I'll see him at next LobsterCon. And I think it's tough when you sort of, I don't know, he was everywhere and well loved. So my thoughts go out to his family, and hopefully we can all foil out our Elves decks in his memory, and just remember to enjoy playing Magic. I think.
Yeah, he obviously made a great run at LobsterCon this past year, but to me, Jens is always going to be the guy who crushed with Rifter.
Yeah, I had a feeling you were going to say that.
What else could I say?
Yeah, but So, always good to have some perspective of, sort of why we're doing this whole thing. And, it's been great to see how far reaching Jens's effect had been on the pre-modern and old school communities. And I think we should all hope to follow in his footsteps in that way, and just kind of spread the maximum amount of joy surrounding Magic that we can. Not hard to segue out of that, but I suppose there is more pre-modern to be played. The Dress Crew Regional is currently in progress, with over 100 players. And that's going to be an exciting one to pour over the results of going into the Sacred Torch Showdown, which is going to feature some Dress Crew members making the trip out to join us. And I feel like we're in a time where nobody actually knows. Like, I feel the least amount of certainty around anything in pre-modern as I ever have. I have no idea what's good. I have no idea what's good in relationship to other things. So for example, right, I think you've been in this spot, or it's been posed on this podcast, right, and in our Discord. If anything beats the Enchantress deck, or what's going on with this Enchantress deck, basically.
The Enchantress deck is eminently beatable. Full stop.
All right. Tell us more.
So it's funny. I kind of went I have two overlapping full circle experiences, right? I went from, I lose to Stasis. I love Stasis. Stasis is a meme. Wellspring does what? I love Stasis. Stasis is a meme. Okay, that's the... So I'm not sure where I currently am. I think I'm probably on Stasis is a meme right now. But I was on, oh shit, I'm going to play mono blue Stasis at Sacred Torch. No one's going to see it coming at one point. One of the worst losses of my entire life was to SWB playing for the belt that night, where he was just like, he mulls to 5 and
Mike,
gives
you've
me
told the
play.
story 5 times
Anyway,
already.
I'm full circle on the stasis thing, but then I was also full circle on the Enchantress thing, which is just like I lose to SWB for the belt. I lose to SWB for the night for the meetup night, whatever, the league night. I lose to SWB in the top 4 of Bearded. Enchantress is unbeatable. I crush SWB, and then I was like, oh. That, I credit Nick Mayo. Nick Mayo is just like, the reason your Elves deck isn't doing as well against Enchantress is because you cut Tangle Wire.
Right, but that just puts you in a horrible part of the cycle where you think that Stompy is good. Like, that's a really bad place to be.
It is
right now. That is like the weakest part of your curve, right?
I'm on Stompy for Sacred Torch. If Sacred Torch were right now, I would have Rogue Elephant in front of me.
Let me tell you what happens when you play mono green Stompy with Tangle Wire against an opponent playing Priest of Titania.
A Lava Dart? How about a Lava Dart?
No. Your opponent just has Priest of Titania, right? So you play an elf. Your opponent plays an elf. You play 2 elves, or maybe an elf and a rogue elephant. Your opponent plays Priest of Titania. Then passes your turn. Your choice is going into turn 3. You were on the play, by the way, which is like the best thing that you can do.
Oh, I mean, I better be discarding my.
You're at turn 3, and you are looking down, and you have like a Tangle Wire and a Call of the Herd. And the best thing that you could possibly do here is just Rancor your Rogue Elephant and hope that your opponent doesn't just untap with an active Priest of Titania that taps for 5 mana and just annihilates you in one turn.
Really just plays a Deranged Hermit or something is probably good enough.
Yeah, Deranged Hermit's good enough, right?
It's probably
that, but that's the bottom of the range. Like, the bottom of the range is like, ugh, guess I'll just get a Deranged Hermit. The top of the range is like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to get a Survival.
Yeah, I mean, how different is that from the Elves Mirror when one person has a Priest of Titania advantage?
Because the rest of the tournament, you're playing mono green Stompy and not Elves.
Well, here's the thing about Stompy. I won the league that night. And I beat SWB. How many people can say that? Exactly. Well, Jeff Ferris has done it multiple times. But that's the only time I've ever done that.
I think that if you played Elves with Tangle Wire, you would be plausibly better against Enchantress than Elves without Tangle Wire, and you would still be a playable deck into the rest of the format, because I think that you are faster than Stompy, and you also beat Stompy heads up, I guess, if we're living in the Stompy metagame.
This is weird,
right?
It's weird that we're even having the Stompy discussion right now, but I accept what you're saying. I feel like Tangle Wire is a card you can play in Elves. It has been played by reasonable Elves players, including Nick Mayo, and
it was literal stock. It was literal stock in Elves for years.
Rich does not have Tangle Wire in his current Elves deck that he broke Brian Selden with. So Brian Selden in this month's top elimination rounds took out Stompy in the round of 16, played by Brian Kowal, but then was just broken by Rich Shea on Elves. So, that is kind of encouraging if you're an Elves guy, but I don't believe Rich has Tangle Wire.
Yeah, Rich doesn't have Tangle Wire. I don't think Tangle Wire is particularly good against Burn. But Rich is on another monthly heater. No news there. I think that you can basically take the things that are good about first of all, the things that are good about the Stompy deck are good about the Elves deck to begin with, right? It's just starting with 8 mana dorks, and I guess Quirion Ranger has the added benefit of giving your team vigilance, right? So if you wanted to, you can just play 4 Call of the Herd in your Elves deck, and it's basically the same, because let me tell you, Rogue Elephant is not winning any awards. Rogue Elephant is the worst trade for a Lightning Bolt or Sword Splasher in the universe.
The night that I won, I beat Goblins twice, and the night that Lan won, he beat Goblins at least once. I think he beat Bill Ellis for the belt, if not having beaten it earlier. And he also beat at least one Oath deck, if not 2 Oath decks. That's a rough road for Elves. I think Elves has a 0% chance of beating the 2 Goblin decks I beat that night, One of them I 2-0'd and then won some fun games. The other one I 2-1'd and it was close, And I think that Elves just never does that. And so
in order for that to be true, though, every narrative that you use to describe what made it possible for you to beat those decks needs to necessarily be inaccessible to the Elves deck, because I listened to Spike Colony the last couple of weeks and I heard things like, oh, if you have 2 3/3s and you can untap one,
I played a first turn 3/3 into a Goblin Lackey. I played a first turn 3/3 into a Mog Fanatic, and I free spell Giant Growth to 1/1 on turn when they were on the play and they had a first turn Lackey, and I played a free spell counterspell on my 1/1 twice.
All right.
So the answer to that is all the games I won, which is 4 games, were based on cards that are not in the Elves deck.
Well, then just add Bounty the Hunt to the Elves deck, I guess, is what you're saying.
Well, I invigorated once. I actually invigorated twice.
Yeah, you can sub. First of all, Bounty the Hunt is a disgrace, but you can also play Invigorate in the Elves deck if you so please.
Yeah, Invigorate is not a good card in the Elves deck. It's an excellent card in the Stompy. If you're going to accept that the Stompy is a viable strategy, Invigorate is a good card in the Stompy deck. It's the Stompy Fire Blast. So,
well, okay, let me pitch this to you in another direction, right? The bottom 12 cards in the Stompy deck must be worse than just adding Survival of the Fittest, Skya's Cradle.
No, this is all these models. So actually, I just want to also talk about the untapperless Elves deck versus more stock or even my Elves.
Well,
deck.
let's stay in this lane right now. So what bothers you about
this? Just not true. Okay, so if you're willing to add a fundamental turn, then the narrative changes a lot, right? So you're just like, okay, I'm literally going to add no less than 0.5 turn on average. Then you're right. All the things that you say, if you're willing to do this thing, are literally right. Okay. However, the Stompy deck doesn't play like that. It's more like a breakfast deck than it is like an Elves deck. The Elves deck has many plans. Okay. The Elves deck can just play a grindy game with Multani's Acolyte. The Elves deck can play 3/1/1s and attack you with a naturalized backup. The Elves deck can play survival and go fast. The Elves deck can play survival and go value. It has all these different plans. The Stompy deck is all gas, no brakes. Its advantage is it taps all of its mana and sends in situations where the opponent does not have enough mana to react. So the way that Land put it is, you play a 3/3 on turn 2 and your opponent doesn't know what just happened, right? Like, that is a thing that many decks in Premodern don't care about. Okay, that is a thing that many
understand.
Decks in Premodern
This is why I don't actually think that it is too much of a hot take to say that. First of all, the 2 of the 3 things that you named are not like one of the things that you're just like 3/1/1s and a naturalized. Both the Elves deck and the Stompy deck
I'm just saying, I'm describing that the Elves
I understand, right? So the overlap in the range, the only thing that doesn't overlap in the range that you stated was like the one surrounding survival, but you could do that with survival. And the only things that every section, like part of the things was like you're talking about this grindiness. Is like, I don't think that the Stompy deck in adding Call the Herd and Treetop Village, like, what was not an eye to grindiness. Like, I think that we actually need to we don't have to go 50-50 on like mid-range versus aggro, right? But we need to invite the possibility of going 90-10, right? Because we're already at 90-10 with the Stompy deck. Call of the Herd is slower than the 2/3 if your opponent has a non-basic land, right?
Yeah, so I think we're moving from we're a force and leverage podcast, right? Like, instead of a character podcast.
No. I think that it's important to be like, you can have this deck with I'm gonna go one step further, right? It is very easy to explain what a deck does in terms of absolutes, right? Like, the Dreadnought deck plays Dreadnought on turn 2, right? And then it has some amount of counterspell backup, and that beats your opponent. And that happens in,
a shocking percentage.
A shocking percentage of games, but still at times like a minority, right? Because like a lot of the time your opponent has a range of things to say about it, and then so your turn 2 Dreadnought turns into a turn 3 or turn 4 Dreadnought.
Well, the bigger thing is if you just ask any good player why they didn't win the game with Dreadnought is they drew 20 cards and they never saw Dreadnought. That's actually
sure that happens, but you have stopgap measures for that, like with Flash of Insight. Like the reason why Dreadnought is a difficult deck to play is that everybody knows like what they need to do to win, which is like attack with Dreadnought twice and sometimes Mishra's Factory 10 times. But not everybody knows how to get there, and not everybody knows how to build the Dreadnought deck to reach that endpoint. Similarly, let's take a look at Burn, right? So one of the most common things that people talk about with Burn is, why don't we add Flame Rift to this deck, right? If the point is if the object of the deck is to deal damage, why don't we play this card that deals 4 damage to 2 mana? And anybody who's played Burn and is like a Burn sensei is like laughing in the face of the people who make the suggestion. And yet time and time and again, people are like looking at Burn lists and just being like, oh, why don't you play Flame Rift and Burn? And the answer to that question is that like the card that you're replacing Flame Rift with, which in this case I would say is like, I don't know, what's the 4 worst cards on Burn? Is it Incinerate?
It's Incinerate. So
it's Incinerate or Shock.
Shock, yeah.
It doesn't matter, right?
Both of those are bad options for a Flame Rift substitution.
Even though
they're literally just worse.
Even though those deal less damage for the mana invested, like they are better at allowing Burn to be more than just a combo deck.
So actually, let me just address this. One, the extra point of damage you get on Flame Rift from Incinerate often won't matter, right? The extra mana, the extra 2 damage you get relative to a shock will almost always matter, right? The damage you deal to yourself puts you in a situation where you probably never have enough cards to side out in the mirror. Like that's actually so you're like, you dramatically hamstring yourself in the mirror. But the real problem with this argument is Burn is very much a deck that exists in like the center of the metagame map, versus people imagining Burn is like, oh, I mean, I guess it's the closest thing to a Storm combo deck other than a Brain Freeze Sapphire Medallion deck. It's the next closest thing in Premodern, but its strength is it's very close to the center of the metagame map, and it can play all these different game plans, right? It can play mid-range, it can play a removal deck, it can go all in with one drops, and you take away its greatest strength when you do that.
I'm absolutely following, and I think that the point that I'm trying to make is that I think a lot of people look at deck building like it is a single objective practice, right? And that's why even with mid-range decks, but especially with linear decks, right? So most people start and they draw up their Storm combo deck and their beatdown decks and their control decks, and they are thinking about this like sort of singular objective, which is just that my goal is to control the game, so I'm only going to play cards that control the game, right? My goal is to be beat down and beat down quickly. I'm going to play the most aggressive cards that I can. And then once you start getting into the games, you start realizing that there's this genre of mono green Stompy game, right? Where based on what your opponent is doing, like all of a sudden having access to Treetop Village, having access to Call the Herd, like these aren't very aggressive cards. Like Treetop Village is really, really weird in the deck, right? Because on turn 1, you have to play a 1/1.
Yeah, so
turn 2,
there's so many interesting things to respond to.
Right.
Here. Like that's
so let me finish the Treetop Village download, right? Because I've been playing Stompy this week. I kept on drawing it, and I was like, okay, so I can't play it on turn 1 because I want to play a 1/1. And on turn 2, I don't really want to play it either because I want to play
a real card to talk about is Land Grant,
like a
right?
Riverboa. So. Well, let's set Land Grant aside because it's easy to download Land Grant. But and then like turn 3, I don't want to play it really. But my deck is an 18 land deck, so like it's probably my second land most of the time. And then my deck also contains Call the Herd, and my deck also contains Rogue Elephant. So I'm like sacrificing the forest that I need to activate my Treetop Villages, my Cursed Scrolls, and flashback my Caller Herd to my Rogue Elephant so that I can get the 3/3 now, but the delay the 3/3 later. Like
you might never attack with it.
Exactly. So
okay, here's the thing.
The conclusion is the presence of Treetop Village and Call the Herd in the Mono Green Stompy deck, the supposed evolution of this deck, is an acknowledgement that the objective does not have to be the best beatdown deck. Ergo, it is not. I'm not saying that it's right, but ergo, it is not outlandish for me to suggest that the deck could contain something like Survival of the Fittest, just because it's not a beatdown card.
So I have to kind of have to level up a little second and then come back to the details. First of all, you're right. I agree with you in that the inclusion of both Treetop Village and Call the Herd specifically in the main deck, to the exclusion of cards like Vine Riot. By the way, if you had Vine Riot, it's actually pretty interesting in the Priest of Titania situation you're talking about. Like, I don't know. When I played Stompy and Extended, put a lot of Rancors on that Vine Riot, and it got through matchups that had more card advantage than I did, you know? But the thing that I would say is, I guess this is probably true for all good deck building. It's very true in the case of Stompy, but it's probably true everywhere, right? That the decisions that we make are ideally not zero-sum decisions. It's not like I'm giving up 15 points of this in exchange for 15 points of this. Like, the idea is like, all right, I'm giving up 15 points of this for 85 points of this, right? That's sort of the trade-offs in Stompy. So what I would say is, to a degree, and I think this is where you probably get hung up, because maybe I'm wrong about you as a person, but my model of you is as a Magic critic is that you're always looking for whatever the game theory equilibrium perfect play is, or like the game theory equilibrium perfect decision is. But Stompy as a deck, even if you look at the deck that Land played and then the deck that I played versus the deck that BK played, are all different decks in terms of both 60 and 75. And a lot of the value that you get in Stompy is from information imbalance, and also because it forces your opponent to exercise muscles that they are not necessarily used to exercising in Premodern. So let's break that down for a second. I stopped first turn 1-drops and Goblins twice because I had the card Invigorate, right? Like, that's a card people quote unquote don't play around. I beat an excellent Legacy player who made the perfect block for me to have 2 Giant Growths to cast with my 2 open forests. He did not, however, realize that the third card in my hand was an Invigorate, so I put him on Xaxes Dead, gave him 3 life, and then took 4 away, and the fact that I'm presenting Trample. So people don't think about Trample that often because Trample is only relevant for blocking, and who the fuck blocks, right? So Stompy gets a lot of free points that don't exist in game theory equilibrium situations, or just like everybody has all of the perfect information in terms of the opponent's deck list. They won't make that mistake. But like the fact that they don't have that information or they're not used to flexing that muscle gives Stompy some points that are outsized relative to its loss of card power. Because it is a weaker deck in terms of sheer card power. It is an opportunistic deck insofar that it has a bunch of shit that people aren't used to playing against.
Right, which leads to the inevitable conclusion that it's a good deck for 4 rounds, and then by the time you make it to the top 8, if you make it to the top 8, or by the time you play against, somebody who is able to adapt to situations quickly or has more format knowledge, like your edge just gets erased.
So your edge is eroded when you're playing against someone who has a lot of format knowledge, until which point you're in a situation where you metagame in a certain way, right? So part of the reason I played Stompy was I thought it would be good against SWB playing Enchantress, and I was right. Not only is Clock followed by Tangle Wire, per Nick's suggestion, the perfect solution to SWB. I had a spare Tranquil Domain in every sideboarded game we played, including all of the fun, the practice games we played afterwards. Right. The deck has an overwhelming amount of offense relative to specifically the way that Enchantress deals with creature decks, right? So the analysis that SWB had was, we're just like brainstorming how can a deck like this react to a deck like that? He's just like, none of these are viable answers. I never get a fourth turn, right? So like maybe I'm taking turn 2 on turn 5, right? Like, but I never get a fourth turn. So we can't choose any of these cards.
Yeah, I mean, I would like push back on that a little, because I think that Rogue Elephant and Call of the Herd specifically are both really bad against Parallax Wave. And so what I am hearing from this is that, like, if you have Tangle Wire, you win. But, like, if your opponent either gets a Seal Cleansing in first, right, or you don't have Tangle Wire, it's going to be much more of an uphill battle.
I mean, look, both players are allowed to mulligan. I didn't have Tangle Wire in all the games that we played. Like some games, one of the games I notably hard cast a land grant on turn 2. So I had a first turn Elf, the pretty explosive draw. SWB had the Plow, right? So I had a lot of plays I could make. I could have free spelled the land grant, but my hand was quite good, and I didn't want to show him all the interaction I had. So I just, I hard cast it.
Which is also why we are currently in the land grant is bullshit camp.
Yeah, I'm really not sure about land grant. But
because you cut the Vine Dryads, so you're not pitching land grant to Vine Dryad. And let me tell you really about Bounty and the Hunt as a card.
Here's the thing. I beat 2 Goblins decks. I think that and Lan also beat Goblins. He beat Bill Ellis on Goblins the night he won. I think your percentage against Goblins is going to go down dramatically if you don't have access to Bounty and the Hunt. Right?
I agree with that assessment, but that only means, like, here's the problem, right? One of the ways that you beat Thermokarst is by putting Sacred Ground in your sideboard, right?
Nobody beats Thermokarst with Sacred Ground.
Right.
So, that's literally an idiotic thing to say.
Okay. What about...
it's not an idiotic thing to say. If you're caught by that, you deserve to lose. That's actually what I think.
I guess let's just say Anarchy then. Like, you can beat Solitary with Anarchy, right? And, like, the problem is that you have to have... I lost your audio there, but I got your facial expression.
You just really never would, though, right? Like, it's better to beat Solitary with Flaring Pain.
Beating Solitary with Flaring Pain is annoying. You have to have creatures or Price of Progress.
So here's the thing.
Okay, my point.
All these solutions suck, which is why we don't use them.
Right. Bounty the Hunt is a sucky solution to Goblins. Like, you have to have Bounty the Hunt in your deck. Like, can we put anything in our deck that's better?
All right, so I will tell you the mental exercise that I've gone through recently, and you tell me how this conforms to the question that you just asked, okay? Let's go back to Flame Rift and Burn for a second, right? So we're going to be like, all right, we're going to be Flame Rift and Burn. When you want to be Flame Rift and Burn, you get to the point where you're like, should I even be playing Burn? If I'm playing Flame Rift and Burn, I'm kind of person that should be playing Devourer, don't you think? Like, that's actually the next thing that I'm thinking about. Like, I want to increase my likelihood of turn 4 kills. That's what playing Flame Rift and Burn is. Flame Rift isn't even a good turn 3 kill card, right? I guess it's okay, right? But I really want to be the most likely to win on turn 4 I can. Maybe I'm just a Devourer guy at that point, because I'm taking all of the burn not all, but I'm taking a good amount of the burn flexibility away from myself in order to do this.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I guess the reason why I brought Flame Rift up is basically to say that, like, this is something that people with an outside perspective on burn, this is a very common thing suggested by anyone who is joining Premodern new as a format or building burn for the first time. It's just like a classic why not. It's like why aren't we playing this card in this deck? Sure, it seems like so good, right? And I think that the reason why we aren't is sort of nuanced and interesting on a level that newer players need to have it like explained to them, because maybe they come from a world of Boros charm type cards that make them immediately drawn to it. So I'm not saying like, I think like the player still wants to play burn. They just don't understand that burn in pre-modern, is unlikely to play Boros charm, for a multitude of reasons.
The other thing is, if in a large tournament, burn is likely to be the most common deck, and you just can't hamstring yourself with 16 cards or something that are bad in the main deck. Like that's, I mean, if you want to win, you can't do that, right? So, to extend this to Stompy, clearly you are right that Stompy, in the world of Cutting Vine Dryad for Call of the Herd, etc., is conceding it's not the fastest version anymore, right?
Yeah.
But it still has
Sky Shroud Elite, man.
Yeah. So I was just like, what about Sky Shroud Elite? And like Lan and BK are both like, that card sucks, right? Like the fact that your opponent can neutralize it and make it into a 1/1 by playing their plan A that's kind of frustrating.
Not if they're on Angry Hermit, which you're just going to lose to.
Right. Yeah. So like I played Cephalid Breakfast. Is that the name of it? Cephalid Breakfast is the one that I played this week.
Yeah, that's what we're calling it. RDs.
Yeah, you just can't lose the Stompy matchup unless they have acceleration into Tangle Wire, and even then you might lose.
Yeah, you might, because you might just tap your first turn Nomads Encore to the Tangle Wire. It does not need to be untapped.
Yeah, also depending on the turn, you might be able to like hit your land drop and cast an opportunity.
Also, hear me out. This happens in roughly 50% of games. You might be on the play.
Well, that never happens for me. But so that's a thing. So I'm just like, okay, well, is there a better deck than Stompy? Is really the question that I'm asking myself. I'm like, of the things that Stompy is good at, is there a better deck than Stompy? And I'm wondering if Suicide Black isn't just the better Stompy. And I'm like, nobody plays Suicide Black, but nobody plays Stompy, right? Like, Suicide Black does a lot of the same things that Stompy does. It has outsized power. It's hard to block. And if you want to beat combo decks, you always will. You always will. No combo deck can beat Suicide Black if Suicide Black decides they want to beat combo decks. That is etched. That's etched in vibranium. Somebody took an adamantium chisel and said no combo deck.
So the reason why Stompy is good is because it runs the 12 elves, which are both mana sources and sources of power. And Suicide Black does not have access to that. And there is an inherent advantage that comes from, like, the genius of 10 land Stompy was because you could have a 1 land hand and just go turn 1 elf, turn 2 Q Ranger, and then you have 4 mana for the rest of the game from 3 cards, right? So
Suicide Black is a lot like Burn from some perspectives, which is that it's actually more extreme than Stompy in terms of its offensive power. And it's also more like Burn in that it can play like Gear 2 if you make it play a certain way. Stompy can't kill someone on turn 2. Suicide Black can, right? Like, that's just a fact, right? Like, Suicide Black can produce much more power than Stompy in the first 2 turns without cheating, right? Like, these are its weird outlier draws, but like, you combine that with the fact that it can never lose to a combo deck, it's actually pretty compelling. However, nobody plays it, but nobody plays Stompy either, right? So I don't know what, like, a Curian Ranger, on average, is it better or worse than a Dark Ritual? I don't know. Dark Ritual has been banned in multiple formats, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that, Suicide Black doesn't get to borrow all of the strengths of Stompy and then also be good in another way, right? Because like Rancor, Call the Herd are like great. The Treetop Village thing is like really getting to me. Like I can't with that card, but I'd sooner play like a Centaur Garden. Like
I have a lot of fond memories of.
What if we
Suicide
cut
Black.
4 Treetop Village for 4 Urz's Bobble?
Okay, we'll play more free giant growths. Okay, let me
How
just
many
give you,
are there left? We're already playing 4 3
no,
bounty,
there's only
3
3
invigorate.
bounty and 3 invigorate in the
So
current
you just
build.
say, okay, yeah.
You could add more, and you could add like Wild Might. Like Wild Might's like an outsized amount of power. Like these are just super opportunistic cards. Like your opponent has to play a certain way, but then you get them. So here's the thing. Imagine you just play like a first turn guy in Suicide Black, and then your opponent doesn't play a Swords to Plowshares or a guy who's you play a 2/2 on turn 1. Your opponent plays a Llanowar Elf. Okay, you play your second turn land, which I don't know. Maybe it's a Crystal Vein. Maybe it's a City of Traders.
Yeah,
I don't
it
know
better
what
be
your
a
build
City of
is.
Traders instead of a Crystal Vein, but go on.
So I could write a 1,500 word article on the difference between Crystal Vein and City of Traders historically and why they both might be right. Okay, so does your opponent block your 2/2 on turn 1? If he doesn't, he might be dead. All right. So the thing about
none of these hatred lines are compelling to me.
So you don't. So the fact that you can play that way is one thing, right? It's the same as the Flame Rift line, right? But you also like Suicide Black will never lose to any combo deck if it doesn't want to, right? Like you literally have to actively make your deck bad against combo to ever lose to any combo deck. That's a pretty compelling thing to say, right? You have access to every way to break every combo you possibly could. You can Engineered Plague Phyrexians or Enchantresses. You can Perish Enchantresses. You can annihilate your opponent's hand while you have a 5/5 in play. You can do so for any amount of mana, including 1 or 0. There are so many things you could do if all you want to do is break up combo decks. The downside of Suicide Black is that its outlier draws are extremely not consistent. Like that's I think the main downside risk. If you had like it's like
well, you're also just like dead to Oath Druids.
Not necessarily. You can just kill them.
Yeah, but you're like you can, right? But the difference between Suicide Black either having to Cabal Therapy the Oath of Druids or hatreding through it or triple snuff outing through it, right? Because the Oath sometimes comes out on turn 1 or sometimes you're on the draw, and like the Stompy deck getting to play 7 Naturalize is like a gigantic difference. Then the other thing is that the Stompy deck can plausibly defeat a burn deck. I actually don't think that it does, but you're saying that it could. The Suicide Black net can never be burned.
No, that's just not true. First of all, to answer your questions, would I rather be Suicide Black or Stompy against Oath? Would I rather have no armor or padded armor when I'm getting stepped on by Galactus? Right? Like, padded armor is not going to save me from Galactus, right? It's there, is Stompy better? Yes. Maybe.
And then
I'm still going to lose, okay? Like, in most cases. Suicide Black has a window, and you're just completely underrating Suicide Black's ability to sideboard against red decks if they want it, right? Like, they kind of have to pick because all of their specifications are narrow, okay? Like, they have to pick a lane, and we don't have access to Demonic Consultation or Vampiric Tutor. I want to say, notably, when I won my first Suicide Black PTQ, which was a giant PTQ, I played against red decks in each of the first 3 rounds, lost game 1 all 3 times, won the match all 3 times. I had a very aggressive sideboard for red decks, and I just ground them, right? Like, you combine life gain and removal, and you just have a decent sized clock, you can get there, right? It's not good. You're gonna lose game 1 the vast majority of the time.
What happens if I just kill all your creatures and have a Sulfuric Vortex in play?
You kill them with Curse Scroll, right? Like, they don't kill all your creatures fast enough necessarily, because the thing is, like, you take a big turn, right? You might be, when you take like the Ball Lightning turn or something, the Ball Lightning turn can get stopped by a Funeral Charm, and then you end up losing. Like, if you're gonna like total gear 2 with Sulfuric Vortex, you're gonna play a slow game against me. I just have some time to get in. Dave
we'll
Price,
get in with what?
Well, so here's the thing. Like Dave Price, Brian Hacker beat JLRR by ritualing out a Mastercore with his City of Traders open, and he just beat him, right? Like, so one of the lines that you take with Suicide Black is to use your City of Traders to cast Mastercore early, and then they have a 1-turn window. They basically have to Fire Blast the Mastercore that turn. If you ever untap with it, the Mastercore is now your entire plan.
Yeah, the Mastercore is the only playable thing that you said so far, right?
So,
but you never beat it with creatures because your creatures are Carnophage, Sarcomancy, Dothy X.
No, you take out all the creatures that damage you on the fun. You take out Sarcomancy
and Negator.
So
what creatures are remaining after? It's just 8 Dothies.
No, you beat you just like side in Massacre and Curse Scroll and Spinning Darkness. Right. It's really hard for them to gear to you.
This is because you boarded out all your creatures, but your remaining creatures are cost 2 mana and they trade with 1 mana cards, right? And then they are also a Curse Scroll deck and a Sulfuric Vortex deck. So I think your only angle is ritualing out a Mastercore, which does sound good, right? But the rest of it is just kind of like, okay, well,
you just bait them with like Carnophage or whatever just to get a trade. They're going to remove it. They're not going to, or you just don't pay for it, right? Like you need to get cards in your graveyard to pay for Spinning Darkness.
If you don't pay, it's just tapped.
Yeah,
right?
But you just don't pay. It obviously on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
It's gonna.
Okay, we don't have to belabor this one. I think that
I'm just saying there is a thing that's unexplored here.
Exactly. That's why we don't need to belabor it. I think that you should build the deck and you should be the person who brings the black deck. I mean, this is a great time in the metagame to be playing something like this because
this week is not going to be the week that I try any of these.
Right. But it can be down the line. Just keep it in the queue, or people listening to this podcast can feel emboldened. I'm skeptical anytime that anybody's played a black aggro deck against me. Like, it just hasn't looked very good. And Dark Ritual, I feel, is an exciting card, but this is a deck that's been like in one of Detail's deck boxes forever, and it's just kind of like
So the big problem with it is all of its lines are specialist lines, right? Like you're not main decking a lot of Cursed Scrolls. Maybe you have some, right? But you might not have any real creature elimination in the main deck. Like if you want to kill creatures, you need to use sideboard space. There's only 15 sideboard cards. Like that, like those are like kind of its big problems, and it doesn't have a good solution to Oath of Druids. You're right. So those are going to be the limitations. But if you're going to go on the Stompy direction, I'm just saying, right? Like Suicide Black isn't so different, and it's not like fundamentally bad. Like first turn 2/2, second turn 5/5, duress you twice is game over for a lot of decks. Like it's straight up game over. Like they're just dead on turn 5 when they and you took their answers away.
Yeah, I mean the problem is the table stakes of Premodern are such that every deck has those lines now. Like one of the big things that I've noticed changing in the format is like people are no longer showing up to the tables with like a deck that just is stone unplayable, right?
Yeah, like the worst deck you'll see is like Blue-Green Madness with no survival, which is
super solid deck. Like it's like a deck that does things that are like, that certain decks can't deal with. Like it has a good, tempo game. It has counter spells. It can put decks in uncomfortable spots. It is a little underpowered, right? But it's not as underpowered as the Rock or Black-White Control or like any kind of dirtily nonsense
that can beat anything are a little underpowered, right? Like if you look at it like Blue-White Control in most formats, like it's nowhere. It's like maybe like in the 65th to 72nd percentile in terms of power level, right? And it's like in the 10th percentile in terms of speed, but it can beat anything, right? Its range of possible victories is very wide.
It's in a weird spot now where it's kind of just doing the like. Now the Blue-White Control deck is a Blue-White Tide deck, and so we had 4 people showing up with Blue-White decks, 2 of them playing Blue-White Flippy and 2 of them playing Blue-White Tide. And like, I think the moment the blue-white tie deck stopped being the same kind of deck was when it was just like, yeah, Impulse is too slow, man. Like,
Yeah, so
like,
that's actually really interesting. So okay, so Drake won this week with blue white Flippy at the 3-0, and then both of the blue white Tide players went 2-0 and 1, drawing against each other unintentionally.
right.
Right. So Addercar Waste had a pretty good night on win rate this week. I mean, I haven't had an Addercar Waste in my deck, but it like I think maybe this is when Premodern's jumping the shark, because I've really kind of been thinking about this. If Impulse is too slow, did Premodern jump the shark? And it's just like, it's, you know, like I don't know if you're familiar with this poker strategy where it's basically like you get your opponent to, you're playing heads up, you get your opponent to commit a lot of chips, and you have a technology that should tell you when you should all in. And that's your entire... So I know some guys who this is their strategy. They're professional poker players, and all they do is play heads up all-ins. And I feel like starting with that hand that I kept against SWB, where I have a 4th turn kill but no 1st turn 1-drop, and he has 2 points of interaction, now I don't have anything. I'm like, maybe I had to hard mulligan into what would be a worse hand 65% of the time, because the hand that I kept is probably not good enough to win, right? Like, maybe that's actually just the thing, you know? And I think that's
I want to reevaluate that. You're saying that would you keep a 7 that wins versus no interaction but loses to interaction, or mulligan to a 6 that can beat interaction but likely like is not going to be winning because supposedly you wouldn't have the material that you need to complete a fast win.
So I'm gonna talk about 2 different models, and I think maybe I'll break my own mental rule here for a second. I didn't evaluate the hand that way, right? So my hand in the abstract, 2 things I would say about the hand was I had a line to a 4th turn kill, and secondly, my hand was any hand that has a line to a 4th turn kill, like a plausible line to a 4th turn kill, is just keepable on the merits. What I was just saying is like, what's the likelihood my 6-card hand has survival of the fittest, right? It's like less than 50% that my 6-card hand is going to have survival of the fittest, and it's increasingly less good that I have survival of the fittest and enough land to operate. That's the reason that I kept the hand. Here's the problem. If SWB has like an above average hand, right? Like 51st percentile or better, either he probably keeps a hand with an anchor, given the fact that I beat him in game 2 because he kept a double Swords of Plowshares hand with no anchor. If he has a hand with an anchor and a Swords of Plowshares, this hand will never win. And so I probably should have thrown it away on that on basis of that, right? Like it's actually a 0, and so this is the Dreamblade scenario.
It is.
I have to take the dog.
However, it is important to be like, sometimes they have Seal of Cleansing for survival of fittest, and then you can't rely on that either. So you're caught trying to beat Swords of Plowshares, Seal of Cleansing, or nothing. And the bigger problem is that if they don't have one, they're very likely to have the other, right? So if your hand depends on both a creature and an enchantment staying on the battlefield, then you have to look at SWB's range and just be like, well, he can't have nothing in his hands, right?
So I think that if I had played 10,000 games against Enchantress, I would have been differently informed. That's one thing I'd say.
Yeah.
Right? But the second thing I'd say is just like, maybe my paradigm was wrong, right? Like, I told you the things that I was thinking about.
Yeah.
50% likely to have survival, even less than 50% likely to have survival and workable mana.
Well, yeah, it's a little bit difficult. I mean, one of the things was like, where you were on the play or the draw?
I was on the draw.
So you're on the draw.
Whoever was on the play won every game.
Right. So you're on the draw, and you know that SWB kept 7.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. So then it becomes like increasingly like, okay, well, he definitely didn't, keep 7 pieces of tissue paper, right? He's got things that he likes to see in his opening hand, which means that your opening hand needs to have some sort of strategy that can like defeat them unopposed. I mean, this used to be like, I mean, I'll repeat a story I tell often, right? Legacy Reanimator wins game 1, and then in games 2 and 3, it needs to have its 2-card combo of Entomb Reanimate and the third thing, which is removal for Leyline of the Void, right? So your life,
your opponent just never keeps a hand that doesn't have access to disrupt your...
Exactly, right? So if your opponent's a Force of Will deck, then you're mulling to having Cabal Therapy Unmask. If your opponent is a Tormod's Crypt, Leyline of the Void deck, then they're mulliganing to interaction for that, etc., 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 right? Like, game 1, you keep the hand that makes turn 1 Grizzlebrand every time. Game 2 and 3, you might want to consider mulliganing a hand that makes turn 1 Grizzlebrand, because all your opponent cares about is you stopping turn 1 Grizzlebrand, which means they're not going to keep a hand.
Because they can't even play the game unless they surmount this hill.
Goblin Lackey behaves in much the same way, right? So in game 1, Mountain Goblin Lackey hands are really good. In game 2 and 3, if your hand is just Mountain Goblin Lackey and your opponent kept 7, you just have to ship it, right? Like, well, plus you're on the draw, like, yeah.
Well, so look.
And if you keep 7, right, then your opponent is going to... So let's say they're on the play with this speculative hand that loses to interaction. You keeping 7 on the play signals to your opponent to mulligan a flimsy 7 so that they can get a 6 with interaction.
It's just, yeah, so in hindsight, it was probably wrong to have kept that hand. So, like, I wanted to just address something you and I had talked about earlier this week, when I was just like, this is how I'm thinking about something. And I might be wrong, right? This is just my mental model.
Right.
All right. So first of all, I'm just going to posit that Untapperless Elves, the deck that you did well with last month, might just be better than my Elves deck, right? So like, I'm willing to put that's actually possible. And I'm also willing to posit that even of the things that my deck is good at, adding Birds of Paradise to, for example, make Thornscape
right. You can split the difference.
Yeah, like that. Like those things are all true, right? So you and I had a discussion, and I'm like, if I play Elves in the top 8, which is coming up this Thursday, I would never play Untapper Elves. I would play my deck because my deck has the potential for faster kills, especially on the play. And your argument was like, look, why don't you plot these things out? Like, what hand do you actually need? And I'm like, this is the way I'm thinking about it. I don't need to do that. If you look at all the universe of potential games that we play, my first round opponent is Landyho. I will win all the games I'm supposed to win, right? Barring a goof grab. I had a goof grab against SWB this week, right? But barring a goof grab, I will win 100% of the games I'm supposed to win because I'm on the play. Then there's this huge chunk in the middle, right? Which is the games that are competitive, because these are the games that go down to grinding, skill, multiple turns, etc. In many ways, the reasons that we love Premodern. I put myself at winning almost 0 of those games, okay? Like, if we're going to go down to playing a bazillion turns, it's lands full range against my Elves deck or your Elves deck, and it goes to skill, I think Lan wins the vast majority of those games. Therefore, if I'm going to make this decision and it's X or Y, right? We're only talking about X or Y. I have to take the fastest deck, because the fastest deck maximizes the likelihood of my initiative Luxac outlier wins, right? Like, I literally just get 5 more percentage points here. Versus if I'm playing against an open field, your deck probably fattens the middle. Right?
All right. So
you get 20% in the middle.
I get what you're saying, and I think that the outcome is that you have to play Elvish Spirit Guide and crop rotation in your Elves deck then.
Oh, wow. I mean, if I'm playing Elvish Spirit Guide, I have Hermit fucking Druid in my deck.
Yeah, I mean, you could do that, but Spirit Guide is the Pablo Suarez technology that was like, okay, here's how you win on turn 3 with Elves. Turn 1, you play Priest of Titania.
Yeah. So I get it, right?
That's pretty good. Need I say more, right?
You better have a plow.
Yeah.
But the thing is, those hands... So the thing that I don't like about that, right? If you're thinking about, your overall net, I think that your overall net playing Elvish Spirit Guide and Elves is probably negative, right? You maximize this number of initiative draws, but I'm in a very, very specific situation, which is that I'm on the play in the entire top 8. You can't make that decision in the dark, right? And here's the problem. I think I will play against a lot of Swords to Plowshares. If you're gonna take that decision, this is gonna make your Swords to Plowshares losses worse.
Look, it's much more likely that they have a Swords to Plowshares on turn 2 than they do on turn 1. Swords to Plowshares is actually is actually at its weakest against Elves, because the best target is Priest of Titania, and then the remaining target
by Symbiote is pretty good, actually.
It's not, right? You paid 1 mana, I paid 1 mana. I paid a card. I might have already gotten a card back. You still played a card. I was the proactive player. You were the reactive player, right?
First of all, I am very happy to Swords to Plowshares whatever Elves does on the first turn almost every time. If I'm the Swords to Plowshares player, I'm just saying it gets increasingly bad if I use 2 cards and I get
no. You don't get me wrong. Them plowing your whatever, but the fact that you can either do one of 2 things. Thing number 1 is you're on the play and you sandbag your priest, right? You go elf, go. Right? And your opponent with their Swords to Plowshares in the plains has to choose to Swords to Plowshares this elf, pass the turn back to you, and then you play Priest of Titania or Symbiote +1 or whatever. And then they've already used their Swords to Plowshares. Because that's the thing, is if you start on turn 1 elf, you pass the turn, your opponent doesn't plow it, then you can go Symbiote Titania, right?
One of the things that's inspiring to me about what you're talking about right now is that Swords to Plowshares is even worse against your build of Elves, right? You have Skyshard Poachers and more deranged.
Yeah. My
versus I have more Symbiotes and Kamal, right? So
I don't even know if my deck loses to Swords to Plowshares decks with the exception of Replenish. I don't. Yeah.
If I had more chance to practice more things widely, I might have a very different opinion. But the reason that I wouldn't go the Elvish Spirit Guide route for this week, right? This week is a fat week of Magic for me, okay? Is the sense that I've gotten playing Elves over the course of 2 or 3 events, the current version that I played the proto version of this at Grand Prix Levine, made top 8, right? Then I've been playing it a lot recently, including top 4 at Bearded. Is I love getting into those middle turns where I'm just playing a different gear. And the feeling that I got playing Elves at Bearded through the Swiss was, this is the best mid-range deck in Premodern. I literally can just do whatever I want, draw 1 extra card a turn, but it's always something my opponent has to deal with, right? And I have amazing recovery lines, right? I could just draw extra cards every turn, and my opponent is always on the back foot. Or I can just shift into a scalpel, right? I'm just a scalpel against Dreadnought. They can't do anything, right? Every line they take is horrible. And so I really like that. The problem is that's not good against Lan, right? Lan plays decks that are far too incisive to play these kinds of things, and I just don't think I'd be ahead if I'm
right. So this is actually
long middle games against him specifically.
This is actually
against the average play. I'm fine.
Yeah, this is what's actually kind of getting me really confused about Premodern, right? Because we've essentially created this arms race of making decks more robust. But once again, it's showing up to the club and there's no ladies, because we're all here. And we're taking our super linear.
You ever paid
decks.
cover to get into a club and there was no ladies once you got inside?
So we've all got these super linear decks, and we're oh man, we're losing to these interactive mid-rangey decks. So we need to surprise them, right? We have our Grotog with Armageddons. We have our Elves with Sylvan Library and Poacher. We have our Replenish deck with Exalted Angel in the sideboard. Our Stompy deck with Call of the Herds, right? All of our decks are basically, we just changed them so that we could just beat up on Terrageddon And also, everyone just stopped playing Terrageddon. So what are we going after with our like mid-ranginess? Because we stopped playing. We like stopped playing. We're all trying to like murder each other, right? And
So-
there's no more mid-range decks to eat.
It's crazy, right? Like when I got off of red, when I was just like, oh, I can't red anymore. That's when I lost on camera to Phil Nguyen, and he just had Tempting Worm and Terrageddon. And I'm like, this is the Premodern. He's the mid-rangiest mid-range. He has a freaking combo kill. Like I think of Terravore blow up all the lands as a combo kill, right? That's how it feels to me every time it happens.
Right. Well, no,
right?
and that's why it's ridiculous that Terrageddon is like the weakest playable deck in the format now, because like this is a deck that has that combo.
It has an incredible combo.
But the rest of the cards are horrible. Wayfarer, Sylvan Library, Call the Herd, like Swords to Plowshares. You know,
it's
God bless its heart.
The worst Swords to Plowshares deck. It's the worst Call of the Herd deck. It's the worst Exalted Angel deck. It is close to the best, if not the best, Sylvan Library deck, though.
Yeah.
Well, Sylvan Library is outstanding.
It's just such a like. I never want to be like. Okay, this is my favorite thing in the world, is to just like not have Disenchant in my deck. Right, not having Disenchant in not only in my main deck, but like my 75. Like being the guy that shows up and is just like
just play Contemporary Standard.
Just like
you could just do that.
You're like, oh, Lanny, your deck has white or green. Like, why don't you play Disenchant or Naturalize? And then I just get to go like name an enchantment or artifact that matters to me. It's like it doesn't, because that's why my deck is so good. Like, you know, which is basically to say, it's also, you know, harkening back to the Grotog without Swords to Plowshares days, which basically just said, it's like, okay, well, people don't play creatures that I can't beat, you know, that I can't just beat with Fire Ice, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the format changes. This stuff always changes. Swords to Plowshares is a pretty good card still. But, you know, it was a exciting time in Replenish's history when the deck just didn't have Swords to Plowshares main deck. Because just like, okay, well, most of my problems are solved by like P-Wave Opal. So Swords to Plowshares' only target is Meddling Mage. And the first thing that you name with Meddling Mage is Swords to Plowshares.
So here's the thing about Replenish, right? In the abstract, Replenish is like, its limit is very near deck number 1, right? Like it's no worse than deck number 3, okay? But it's very near deck number 1. The thing about Replenish is, it is, when it goes off, it is among the most powerful decks. It's really, really high ceiling, okay? But its foil is that it is not that fast. And I hate to put it this way, where like you can make it so your opponent can neither interact with you nor play the game anymore on turn 3, and that's not fast enough, right? Like it's the existence of Swords to Plowshares just shifts the opponent's fundamental turn by 1. Right, so you trade 1 mana on a turn that you maybe don't have anything to do with mana, right? Like on specifically turn 1, right? And I just shift your fundamental turn by 1. It gives me, as the deck that is a little bit slow to get to my dream draw, 1 breathing room turn. And I think that's very meaningful. That's like a time walk.
It deals with a Goblin Lackey or Weather Wayfarer, like both of which can threaten closing the game before you have the ability to do your thing.
Like the double Jackal Pup outlier draw on the play is usually good enough to be replaced.
Well, you're just like even against Burn anyways. Like you just don't necessarily beat Burn. So
and you tend to lose game 1 if they're on the play, right? Like so, Swords to Plowshares is among the best tools there, right? Yeah. So, and I'm just saying, like, all it did, it's a de facto time walk. Right, that's the thing.
Right, yeah.
And like, is it good? It's not good. It doesn't help your strategy in any way. But is a time walk good? Like, yeah, it's a time walk.
Right. And that's kind of where I'm at, which is just like, first of all, I think point number 1, there is no longer such thing as a removal deck in Premodern.
Was there ever?
For it, probably not ever, but now more than ever, there are no longer removal decks in Premodern. The last remaining removal deck is, again, either Terraganon, which plays 4 Swords of Plowshares and 2 main deck disenchant effects, and then boards into more Pyroclasm, whatever nonsense. And then Blue-White Tide, which played Swords of Plowshares, disenchant, or Seal of Cleansing and Wrath of God.
Would you consider Black-White Control and its cousins, Dead Gaia Ale, etc., to be completely non-viable decks?
I think that Black-White Control is completely non-viable, yeah. Because Black-White Control's best matchup was Landstill. So it was like an unplayable
really
deck.
Good against Ponza.
That was, yeah, okay, Ponza, fine.
It's good against, I think Black-White Control is the kind of deck that you could play in the PSS format, maybe, but like...
No, not if you...
not if your opponent has... Yeah, okay, you're right. Never mind.
Not judging by...
Never mind. Okay, so the thing that I'd say about it is I play against Black-White Control once every 2 months at least, right? Because I play a lot of events. So I was just like, look, is it completely non-viable? I just go back to the argument that we had like in the Illuminati like 2 years ago, where Tom and Fran were like, Black-White Control is the best control deck in Premodern.
And you were saying it's a removal deck, yeah.
And I'm like, it isn't even a control deck, right? Like, I'm not saying you can't play it. I'm not saying that this version that you have, which is just the deck I played on the Pro Tour like 20 years ago. It's not like this any major innovations here. Like, but it's not even a control deck. But more importantly, like, I'm not saying that it's not better than the version that was before, but I'm not sure you can play it, right? Like, and they're like, no, control decks don't have to have counter spells. And my whole argument was, yes, they do. Like, you can't stop someone from casting mass mana removal, right? And like, your deck literally requires 7 lands in play for minimum functionality. If you can't stop mass mana removal, your deck is not viable. Like, that was my argument, right? And they're like, no, our deck is good. I didn't think it was good. I ended up being right based on your...
Yeah, I mean, based on the data, it's not a very good deck. And it's like hard for...
I'll play it at a meetup or whatever. It's fun to cast Gerard's Verdict.
Oh my god,
that is really fun. I love casting Gerard's
Sounds
Verdict.
miserable. Have you been to a meetup recently? You don't want to be the worst deck in the room.
I have not. I mean, I love that everybody is a shark now.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a real deck every week, and you don't know what their real deck is.
Yeah, thank God. Yeah,
it is fucking awesome.
It's great. Honestly, it's great because sometimes meetup story for this week. I saw on the Mono Blue Dreadnought Discord somebody had coded a simulation of Dreadnought combo hands and combo plus protection hands, and ran it and had a nice bar chart that basically said if you mulligan, you're gonna make a Dreadnought, and a lot of the time you'll have protection, right? And sometimes the protection is days and whatever. So that got me thinking. I was like, okay, a lot of the stock mono blue Dreadnought deck is saying that you are willing to keep a hand that has some spread of like impulse, portent, whatever nonsense, right? Because
but maybe you shouldn't.
Exactly. But because what you're going to do is like for the first few turns of the game, you might cast some days, you might cast some counterspell, your opponent might not be that proactive, or they'll fall into the trap of getting counterspelled, etc., etc. So these are all things that can happen, right? And so you can keep these hands because a lot of the time, maybe not most of the time, or maybe most of the time, who knows, depending on your opponent and what they're playing and other considerations, you're just going to draw out of the problem, or you're going to run into these long games where accumulated knowledge and flash of insight.
Did he have a turn limit on this? Was it by turn 2, by turn 3?
Yeah, I mean, you'll have to check out the Mono Blue Dreadnought Discord for like the details, but it was like a bar chart that said by each turn the likelihood that you're going to have like combo plus protection and that kind of stuff.
Is it equally true if you're playing like Angry Hermit, right? So
Well,
the Angry Hermit has more acceleration, fewer cantrips,
you
but
can
has an alternate second turn kill.
you can make assumptions based on the baseline that Mono Blue Dreadnought combos at X% that Hermit would be much better, right? But all I'm saying is that like you like the way that the Dreadnought deck was built by certain pilots. Now, shout out to Alvaro Galindo. This was just something that he knew in his bones at all times. And he was one of the first persons to be like, the Dreadnought deck should have 16 lands. And he's like, I'm thinking of going down to 15, right? Like, he was the one who was building the version of the deck that was designed to mulligan. So, fast forward, I was like, okay, well, let's just say we're the version of the deck that's designed to mulligan. What does our deck look like? And I concocted a version that had all 8 blue fetch lands and Mox Diamond in the main deck, but put the swamp and the plains in the sideboard, and then kept the rest of the main deck like all gas, no brakes, right? Just like maximum impulse opportun type stuff. I had Merchant Scroll, right? So that, you know, turn 3 you can set up either your combo or you can just grab a foil if you need a foil, right? So I did that to like
you
max
could like
turn
Armageddon with Psychotog in play on turn 3.
1. Not that casting Armageddon on turn 3 on the play is particularly good, but it is
You could do it.
It's something that my deck could do post sideboard, but I haven't gotten into the sideboard yet. But anyways, I was just like, okay, if we're gonna multi-combo turn 1, let's go ahead, or game 1, let's go ahead and make our like deck good at being multi-combo. So much so that in my very first shuffle and deal of the deck, I just had turn 1 Dreadnought against SWB, which did get met with the Chain of Vapor. But anyways, I'm telling this story because I had this theory about the Dreadnought deck, and immediately I'm playing against an excellent player with an excellent deck, that being SWB on the Blue-White Tide control deck. And we had an excellent match that I ended up losing for a hilarious reason. But it was great because game 1, I got to test my theory. I'm like, what happens if I play turn 1 Dreadnought? What happened was awesome. I played turn 1 Dreadnought. He bounced it. A couple turns later, I played it again with protection. He got through it. He like landed a Factor Fiction, and then I played it for a third time. Like I countered a Humility in the meantime. I played it for a third time, and he had the answer for the third time. But I was just like, wow, my deck is awesome. I made 3 Dreadnoughts in like 12 turns, and if SWB like misses one time on a random Seal of Cleansing or whatever, he's dead. Going into game 2, I board in all my white cards, my black cards. I board out all my Dreadnoughts. My white cards and black cards being 2 Psychotog, 2 Meddling Mage, 3 Armageddon, except for it's 2 Armageddon and an Upheaval because I just didn't want to dig out the 3rd Armageddon because I just saw the Upheaval before I saw my 3rd copy of Armageddon. 4 Duress, and go into the next game.
Is your Plains and Swamp in the sideboard?
Yeah,
also?
Plains and Swamp.
You have Plains, Swamp, and Mox in your sideboard?
Yeah.
We got to do better than this.
No, we can. Don't get me wrong. But this was like a reasoning by extremes, right? The first thing that I wanted to do was just be like, what's the bare minimum look like? Or like, what's the most extreme version of the deck looks like? And then the follow would be like, okay, we have these slots. Can we move Swamp and Plains into the main deck? Can we move whatever into the main deck?
I love where you're coming from. I'm just saying, like, sideboard space is like 4 times as valuable as main deck space. You can't have Plains, Swamp, and Mox in your sideboard. That's not a way to win a tournament.
I mean, it all that matters is coverage, right? So if your game 1 coverage does not benefit from the presence of Plains and Swamps, and my reasoning here was like pretty simple. Drawing a Plains or Swamp in your opening hand is like a pseudo mulligan, right? Because if you have Plains or Swamp, you can cast a Dreadnought with it, but if you Dreadnought Vision Charm, you can't untap and counterspell. You can't Gush Foil, so those things are like super important for having the largest range.
So the problem is Dreadnought is naturally advantaged most of the time in game 1. That's why it's the boogeyman that it is. The reason that anybody plays any decks other than Dreadnought is because everybody gets outsized benefit after sideboarding, right? Like more benefit than Dreadnought gets after sideboarding, or at least they used to. Okay. But Dreadnought obviously keeps enough that it keeps winning matches and it continues to be the boogeyman. But if you have that much sideboard space devoted to Planeswamp and Mox, right, that have no extra functionality, right? I think that you're just lagging very far behind in terms of.
Yeah, I mean the counterpoint to that is simply like your I would just say it's like, okay, if you want to enable, first of all, you can just be mono blue, right? So if you want, you can be mono blue and you can just have a configuration of the deck that is like the most aggressive Dr. Surf and Turf in game 1. And then in game 2, you bring it like, your Flash of Insight changes from 1 in the main, 2 in the side instead of 2 in the main, 1 in the side. Like, it's important to note that Raska and Alvaro built 2 different Dreadnought decks to suit their play style. But what would be most interesting is being Alvaro in game 1 and then Raska in games 2 and 3 and building Alvaro's deck in game 1 and having access to Raska's deck in game 2 and 3. Right? I decided to throw a monkey wrench in this and like, well, I want to be Lanny. And then in games 2 and 3, I have Mox Time and Psychotog Armageddon.
This is where my head is at for Dreadnought right this second, and I'm not a Dreadnought main or anything. I feel like I naturally got to the same place as the LobsterCon deck that finished second, which is you're hootenanny sideboarded in game 1. You're compromising a little bit, right? But like you're just, I don't know how much worse percentage wise you are at being Alvaro by playing this way.
Well, so let me stop you right there to
of the value against Terragon and Clerics.
Well, let me answer that question, which is that he cut a Gush, a Daze, and an Opt, right? And an Impulse, right? So Gush, Daze, Opt, and Impulse are all really, really powerful, like not like tier 1.
Alvaro line.
Yeah. Like Impulse is super good on turn 2, right?
I definitely cut at least 1 Flash of Insight, right? He had 2 Flash of Insight.
Sure, which doesn't
There's
change.
no way I don't have 4 Gush in my
right.
deck.
Right. Yeah.
That's number 1. I'm like, okay, I'm compromising on this. And then the other question I have is, I feel like accumulated knowledge is closer to Impulse than it is to Opt. Obviously, you're much more bullish on Impulse than I am. I'm already now playing a 2-mana card drawing cantrip or whatever that sometimes only draws 1 card. I kind of want the mana filling from Opt way more than I want the extra cards from Impulse at this point. Well, I'm already cutting at least 1 Flash of
Insight. And I'll explain why I agree. Like if your line is turn 1 Portent, turn 2 Impulse, turn 3 combo with Protection, that sometimes is too slow on the draw if your opponent's line is either Mountain Goblin Lackey or Forest Llanowar Elf, or I guess like Ritual Rotling Reanimator. Probably.
It was just like clock interaction is actually.
You might lose. You might
on the play.
My point is,
that matters.
You might lose to no interaction, right? If your opponent just has Goblin Lackey and War Chief, then you'll just lose to them. Like
lose
they don't even
offense.
They don't
Here
even.
It comes.
Yeah. So that's
Miss America.
That's what makes Impulse weak in that scenario, which is it's an easy fix. You just cast your Impulse on turn 1 with Mox Diamond, and then you're like, my deck can go land, Mox, Merchant Scroll for a Vision Charm or foil, turn 2 combo.
Yeah,
Gush foil. Like
I am like, remember when we were coming back from LobsterCon and I was playing the blue-red 12-12 deck for a while.
Whoa, yeah.
And I'm on this. I'm like, this deck has more weird busted kills. I just beat Triple Seal of Cleansing, right? Like, you're so outlier with the Lotus Petals here. Like, we could really go all gas, no brakes. There's a lot of ways to do it. So, if you want to be an idiot, we can be stupid.
I'm going to say this, and it is important that the the people out there hear it. It is good to have lots of islands in your Dreadnought deck instead of Shivan Reef
City of
or
Brass.
Adark Waste or City of, like, I drew up the deck and I had City of Brass, right? Because I was supporting the splash. I had City of Brass instead of Mox Diamond. And I sat there and I was like, if I'm going to ship this on turn 2 and I can't Gush Foil backup, then this is a bad idea, right? My view of this deck is necessitated by the fact that I'm going to go Island Portent, Island Dreadnought combo, Gush Foil. And if I put
Daze Foil.
Well, Daze Foil you can do with Island or Dark Our Way. So you can take that off the table. But Gush Foil is super important, right? I was like, if I am committed to mulliganing to a hand that has turn 2 Dreadnought and like a foil and like draws for the turn and it draws the Gush and it looks down at its lands and it's wrong, then you're going to have gotten me. The reason why I was so against the Island argument in the past was that my previous conception of the Dreadnought deck was that it was never interested in mulliganing to a Dreadnought hand. It would keep most speculative hands, and the thing is, most speculative hands like would make a Dreadnought at some point, and then in the meantime cast a Meddling Mage, do all sorts of other stuff.
Here's the thing. If you were an alien and you were just like never played Premodern, and you just looked at the deck lists from over these eras, controlling for things like the land tax ban or show and tell or whatever, you might not appreciate a very basic thing, which is that all the conversation we're having around this stuff right now is just based on what people are picking to play, right? There are universes where slow playing Dreadnought is way better than hyper jamming Dreadnought. Like, if you're playing every single round against people who have 4 Swords to Plowshares, 4 Seal of Cleansing, who might be going first some of the time, this is not nearly as effective as it is in the current thought process.
That's actually so interesting, which is to say, if everybody had 4 Swords of Plowshares, 4 Seal of Cleansing, would Dreadnought even be a playable deck?
Yes, of course it would. It would be different, right? Like, who hasn't beaten a deck with 4 Swords of Plowshares and 4 Seal of Cleansing with Dreadnought, right? Like, you can do it.
Right, but you can do it, but you lose all of your free wins against goblins. You lose all your free wins against burn, which we went into the data matrix, and when we took that out of the sample, Dreadnought wasn't even like 50%, or it was just 50%, right? If we take out all of the decks that lose to turn 2 Dreadnought, so, like, first of all, let's talk about the decks that beat turn 2 Dreadnought, right? Enchantress.
There's not a lot of them.
Enchantress, Replenish.
When you say beat, you mean can beat?
Tide Control. I mean, I think that if you
Stasis.
Stasis. Like, I think if you ship a Dreadnought turn 2 against the decks that we just named, like, you know, you're going to be in trouble. Blue-Black Psychotog sometimes. I mean, I guess Blue-Black Psychotog might be the worst.
Black-White Control is pretty good against
Black-White Control, yeah. It's
Rest Swords to Plowshares works just fine.
Black-White Control used to be favored against Dreadnought.
Yeah,
you know?
So Dead Guy Ale is fine in this situation.
Dead Guy Ale has always been good against Dreadnought.
So what I'm saying is, like, but if you're going to shift this and you're just like, okay, the reason that I like the version that was similar to the version that made the finals of LobsterCon, like I said, I would be returning a Gush to my deck at a minimum, right? Is that you get the whole hootenanny sideboarded experience. I can play the slow game in game 1, accumulate material, and win another way, right? And I have fewer. Actually, I don't even have that fewer turn 2 kills. I have fewer turn 3 kills.
I'm with you. I'm with you on this 100%. That, like, let me talk about the problem. First, the problem is this accumulated knowledge sideboard being designed to beat a deck like Terrageddon is, like, not a great place to be, because Terrageddon's not being played that well, and it's just not that good of a deck anymore.
But it's also good against decks like Clerics. It's also good against decks that have, like, who are trying to exchange resources with you.
Let's cut through the noise here and talk about where our edge is coming from and the size of that edge, right? Because the most important thing here is what happens to the matchups that are difficult, that do not get solved by an accumulated knowledge. So in the LobsterCon 2024 world, right, we had Replenish and Red Green Oath as being the most natural predators of the Dreadnought deck.
One of those turned out to not be much of a predator.
So no. Neither of those turned out to be a predator, but only because of the innovation. So it's important to point out that the world that existed in 2024 LobsterCon was Spy Colony podcast saying, I would not play Mono Blue Dreadnought ever. I would not play Blue White Dreadnought because Blue White Dreadnought is not that good against Red Green Oath.
Well, Blue White Dreadnought in particular gets worse against Red Green Oath, right? Like for a lot of reasons.
Right. But much better against Replenish, right? Because the Mono Blue Dreadnought at the time didn't have a secondary plan. So Replenish would just overload on answers. This was before it had ever been mentioned that Mono Blue Dreadnought could just cast 8 counter spells over the course of the game and like Vision Charm you offensively, right? We had seen glimpses of this with Rich Shea doing it in the PSS, but it was not common knowledge. It was not an unlock that every Dreadnought player in the planet had.
And to be fair, that Replenish players can tune their game in order to prevent this.
Yeah. So, but I'm talking about that world, right? And so the problem was these decks were predators of Dreadnought decks. The other decks that were kind of splashing around were sort of like less popular. We never said that Dreadnought was favored against goblins. That has come to fore, but it didn't look like Burn was like a super heavy force, even though you brought it to LobsterCon, and obviously Burn has continued to fall off over the years. But it just we weren't sure where Dreadnought's place was and if it had like a favorable place going into LobsterCon 24. But all you had to do to change that was to make your game against Replenish and Green Red Oath completely undeniable. Okay. The medium follow-up to that was the build of Hootenanny Blue, which was just that I know for a fact that these guys are all going to be playing a Terragon deck that's gonna beat me in this thing.
I guess importantly, the Hootenanny Blue version loses like 75% of its hyper edge against Ponza.
I mean, it replaced it with Dominate, which is still quite good against Ponza, but I will contend that the Hootenanny Blue with no Tide is much worse against Replenish. But the point was, it then pivoted to knowing that Terrageddon is my worst matchup now. How do I beat Terrageddon? The answer is quite simple, with lots of card advantage. Okay, now it's 2025. You're playing in the Duress Crew quarterly. You're playing in the Sacred Torch 2K. You want to play Dreadnought.
It's got to be like 3.5K right now, by the way.
Yeah, it's over 2Ks. And then you have this new problem. Now you have to beat Enchantress, the possibility of a Red-Green Oath deck that might play Carpet of Flowers in the sideboard or might be doing something more interesting. The possibility that these Replenish decks are, moved more towards middling mage type cards or means of defeating your Tide plan, right? Terrageddon decks, which you've defeated with your accumulated knowledge plan, have completely disappeared. One of the things that Raska told me was, or Raska would say quite often, was he would just be like, I think I could probably build this sideboard to beat any deck, right? If Clerics became the best deck, I'm pretty sure I could build a sideboard or find a sideboard to beat those decks. But that takes a ton of work and development time.
Yeah, it's AK Dominate is the way you go, right? So let me cut to, I think, where you're trying to get to, because I think this is basically what you already said. We're at Bearded. SWB beats a kid on Dreadnought, right?
Yeah.
And I'm watching this, and I'm like, listen, kid. He's younger than me. Everybody's younger than me, but like, I'm like, listen, kid. Do you want a tip, right? And he's just like, yeah. And I'm like, how'd you sideboard? I'm like, okay, I'm gonna absorb this. I'm like, first of all, you should always win game 1. And he's just like, what do you mean? So I explain to him how you win game 1. He's just like, okay, then what's my game plan after sideboarding? Because he has X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, don't sideboard.
Yeah, same thing.
And he's just like, huh? And I'm like, don't sideboard. None of your cards matter. right? Here's the thing. He's going to win game 2. You go in game 3, you're on the play. Every free counterspell is in your deck, right? So anyway, last round of the Swiss happens. Kid comes up to me. He's just like, I'm really glad we had the conversation. I'm like, why? He's like, I won game 1 exactly how you said. He got me game 2. I didn't sideboard for game 3. I just mulliganed to the jam and had 2 free spells, and that was game.
Yeah.
And I'm like, think that's the only way that you can do it, kid.
Yeah, that's what I've been pitching as well. I mean, game 1, obviously you have the 4 counterspells option, so you can decide to take that line, which means that you can actually keep any.
You have 2 different ways to win.
Yeah, you can actually kind of keep any 7, right? Because you can keep a 7 with lots of cantrips that'll make you find 4 counterspells, hopefully before they get their stuff through, or you can keep a hand that makes turn 2 Dreadnought with protection, which protection sometimes just means stifle, right? Because they'll have seal cleansing.
What is your worst 4 cards, right? Because the reason that I ask what are your worst 4 cards is I think it's plausible that you should bring in Essence Flares, right? Because of Xantid Swarm. It's plausible. I don't know, like maybe really just hard mulligan.
Right, because your opponent could keep a hand that is really over leveraged on Xanid Swarm. So it's like a Xanid Swarm Miri's Guile hand. And then like they have the Swarm, you Essence Flare it, they have the Guile doesn't find the goods, then your combo gets through. So your worst 4 cards, if you live in this universe, right, are Flash of Insight, Chain of Vapor. Oh,
that's probably, yeah. So I think that's probably right. So you heard it here first. In my current build of Dreadnought, I have no anti-red cards. I have 4 Essence Flare. So Essence Flare is already an anti-Lackey card. It's already an anti-Jackal Pup card. It doesn't save you against Ball Lightning. It doesn't save you against Fire Blast. But the fact that you can play 4 copies against possibly 4 Xantid Swarms, and it has complete coverage against the entire red suite, I think like no anti-red cards anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Maximum Essence Flare.
I'm excited to introduce this concept, which is not news, but it is pretty straightforward. Play a deck that has free wins against good decks. Against somebody that you know is going to be there, right? Because free wins against Terrageddon doesn't count, okay? Free wins
Nobody even has free wins against Terrageddon.
Yes.
There's 0 decks that have free wins against Terrageddon.
Lots of decks have free wins against Terrageddon.
Who?
Grotog, for 1. Thank you very much. Elves for 2. Thank you very much.
I've lost to Terrageddon with. I mean, if they have Cataclysm, it's not a free win anymore.
SWB lost Elves twice at LobsterCon. That's all that I hear. That's all I need to know.
Right? All right.
Like, he's
that's the bar now. If SWB loses the match, it doesn't matter what the day.
I don't know. Doesn't Enchantress probably shits on Terrageddon? Survival Rock. Let me just pull up the grid. I'm on the grid.
Never mind. Never fucking
Survival
mind.
Rock.
It's not that whether they're advanced.
Survival Madness.
So when I think free wins, I think Goblin Sharpshooter versus Elves. Goblin Sharpshooter versus Stompy. That's what I'm thinking.
No, I'm thinking more Dreadnought versus Burn, right?
That's like not even a free win. They're just advantage.
But that's all that matters. That's all that matters because you're just going to be comfortable. You're going to be sitting there. You know,
that's advantaged against the top of the metagame. I agree.
No.
Further discussion.
What I'm saying is that it is so important to be in a position where the thing that your deck needs to do, like the thing that you're trying to do, is like you're just like sitting there and like this is probably going to happen, right? And the thing that your opponent's deck needs to, like, you want your opponent to be the player that's like doing these Michael J lines where it's like, all I have to do is get Sabo's Web, and then after I do that, I'm gonna get like this other card, and once you play this, it's just simple.
That's not a Michael J line.
Michael J lines are always like, if I have these 3 cards, there's nothing you can do. It's like, I would rather be the guy with 1 card and let Michael J be the guy with 3 cards. Like, to put them together.
I thought you were saying the opposite, which is the very Michael J thing, which is your opponent can be operating there. They get everything they want, right? And they still can't win. That's the most Michael J. Right?
Oh, yeah. Like, my most Michael J is like when I'm just like, oh, like isn't this card good against you? And you're like, it's only good against you if you don't have these 3 cards in a row. And I'm like, so it seems like this card's good against you.
I've never made that argument. Okay. That is not how I operate.
Okay.
I am if I have a flaw in my, actually I have multiple flaws in my game, but the biggest strategic flaw in my game is that I'm high floor. Like all the decisions that I make are high floor decisions. So I don't ever have the spectacular shit. Like I was talking to Andy about this, and I'm like, why do we play Misdirection and Teferi's Response? Those cards suck. They're so good. Like they're 11 out of 10, 2% of the time. Give me high floor cards. Like if I think I'm better than my average opponent, I don't need a plus 25% swing.
Let me use a different example, right? Because let's pull up Goblins versus Terrageddon. All right.
I've only lost this match from the
It's
Goblins.
fine, but what do you think that, without looking, what do you think the favorability is?
65% Terrageddon.
It's 57.5% in favor of Terrageddon.
Yeah.
So you are actually closer to right than what I would say. However, the thing that you said about this matchup, which I thought was really interesting, which was like, you can't beat Armageddon plus Terravor. But my feeling towards that is like, if I win every single time they don't have Armageddon versus plus Terravor, then I'm very happy, right? It turns out probably that the matchup is more nuanced because you have Call of the Herd, other shit, and getting away. But that's like the thing. You're like, okay, well, if the Terravor deck has Cataclysm in it, it's gonna beat Elves. And I'm like, if I'm Elves, I'm like, let them try to figure out how to Cataclysm me. I'm just going to be putting Deranged Hermits on the battlefield, right?
Obviously, 65% is high. Like that's higher than the average win rate of any deck in the Duress Crew data. But like, that's kind of what I meant. It's like more than 50% like advantage in the 60ish range. So the thing is like, so I think about stuff on like maybe 3 different dimensions. One of them is just the numbers, right? Like you tell me like 57%, 65% are meaningfully different. Okay. That's one thing. But then I think about strategic development, and I think about the kinds of mistakes that someone can make, right? So very few players play perfectly every single turn. But if you make a mistake, you can make there's a difference between a mistake that is like relatively harmless, right? Like I played like a Gemstone Mine or a Reflecting Pool on the last turn of the game. Neither one of them deals damage to me unless my opponent has Price of Progress, and I don't take any damage when I tap it, right? Like that. If it's on that turn of the game, it's probably very little harm in either case, but one of them is probably better than the other one. But then there's mistakes that are like, I was supposed to win this game, right? Like I have a 100% likelihood of winning this game if I don't goof grab, right? Like that's I think the things that people really underrate how often that happens and how meaningful those mistakes are. So like the way that I learned this was I went to dinner for John's birthday party once, right? So it was a huge bill, right? And it was like $200 a head. It's a huge bill. We got like 2 seafood towers and the best wine I had ever drunk, right? Like, so I didn't finish my second glass of wine, and Tim McKenna's like, you have to finish that. And I'm like, you know, I've had like a big meal. I can't. He's just like, if you got any idea how much this bottle costs? He takes the glass and he chugs it, right?
Yeah. This is what you should do, yeah.
Right? So he just slams it. He's like, this bottle was way too expensive for you to not finish this glass of wine, right? So we're going, and everybody in this table are pulling out their credit cards for the credit card game. So I go to pull out my credit card for the credit card game. And Tony Sai takes my hand. He says, pay the fucking money. And I'm like, why? He's just like, I'm a professional gambler and I'm going to pay the money. And I'm like, there's like 12 people at the table, like a low chance of losing the credit card game. He's just like, if you lose, it is a devastating loss, right? It's not the percentage likelihood of losing. It's the percentage likelihood times how bad the loss is, right? And there are many mistakes that people underrate possibility of making that take you from 100% to 0% super fast.
Yeah, let me go ahead and bring in the poker concept here that's related to this, and it's called bankroll management, right? And so if Michael J was well bankrolled, then he could play the credit card game with a potential loss of I guess whatever, let's just say 10 times 200, right? So like a $2,000 bill, right? If you're well bankrolled, you're definitely happy to gamble for equal edge at all times. Not a big deal, right? But if you can't afford a $2,000 loss, then you can't afford to be at the tables. you use this story when talking about Tempting Worm during the Tempting Worm episode, and it is certainly just as relevant here, but it's like weird because you're basically saying the inverse thing, which is that you should play the rock in every deck, or you should play the rock instead of every deck, because you never want to be like, you never want to be elves against goblins.
I'm saying, like, when you think about like, I think about strategy, right, in a way that I think is similar to how you think about game theory equilibrium, right? Kind of the momentum of game theory. Like, okay, if everybody is operating on their strategy, this is what happens, right? But there's a huge monkey wrench in that, which is like, if everybody is operating on their strategy and doesn't goof grab at any point over the course of this is what happens. And I think that and maybe I never said that in a specific sentence, but that's what I mean. And so,
right, and I understand where that comes from, because that is my fixation, right? Because it is unimportant to me whether or not you win games or matches against somebody that you have an angle against, and it is also difficult for us on our podcast to explain how you're supposed to angle opponents, because that comes from experience, that comes from, like, that's personalized to everyone, right? So, like, a lot of times you'll be on the forums, you'll be talking about a deck, and then people will be like, oh, I've got a lot of this in my metagame, so I'm going to play like this card. And I'm just kind of like, I can't help you, right? Because obviously that card is good against X kind of deck that you're targeting or whatever, but like, I can't make that decision for you, because that's just gambling, right? That's just like, oh, the deck is hot, right? So I'm gonna make a exploitative bet. Like, I can only help you in saying, like, listen, the decks that are the top decks, and my function of this is just being like, okay, like, even if your metagame is heavy blue, like, if you want to win the tournament, you're going to need to beat the blue decks and the decks that beat the blue decks. So it's just kind of like, cut through the noise, build the best version of the deck, instead of trying to take this, like, super exploitative angle, because that's something that is going to sort of reward you in the places where it matters, if you have outsized value on that sort of thing, right? Because the risk of, to me, the risk of ruin is, like, you know, rubbing my hands together and being, like, super excited to, like, play against only blue decks with, like, my stasis deck or whatever, and then just get paired against elves in the round of 8, right?
So I'm thinking about this situation I was in just this week, right? So I won my first 2 rounds. I beat Blue Green Madness and Stasis playing Breakfast, and then I'm up against SWB if I win, I'll go 3-0. SWB had an unintentional draw with Bill Ellis, so he couldn't win the belt unless other things happened, right? So and I'm playing, and so I execute my strategy perfectly, right? So I mulligan into a bait spell. I've got it, and I get Nomads on Core, Cephalid Illusionist in play, right? So if I had just naturally drawn Reanimate, I win this turn. But I had naturally drawn Exhume, so I don't have enough mana to do everything all in one turn. So I mill my entire deck out and then Crows and Reclamation 2 Reanimates into my deck with the intention of winning the next turn. So I resolve all of those cards and flash back to Cabal Therapies. So I have perfect information, right? So SWB, in hindsight, was like, I almost just picked up my cards at that point. But he's like, I might as well look at the top card of my deck. There's 2 things I could have done. One of the things I could have done was to put 2 Duresses in my deck instead of 2 Reanimates. But the other thing I could have done is actually just reanimated a Nomads on Core and then flash back a Cabal Therapy. Instead, what I did was just reanimate my Sutured Ghoul and go for the kill. And of course, the card he drew was Swords to Plowshares, right? So that's really bad, because I had done everything. Like, I'm playing against one of, if not the best player in the tournament. I executed everything. I got around all of his answers. I set up the turn that I wanted, and then I just didn't execute it, right? I think the Duresses would have been better, because if I go for the Cabal Therapy line, he can draw either Chain or Swords, but he can't draw a counterspell, right? So if he draws a counter spell, he has to counter. He has to counter my reanimation spell. So I beat him with my second reanimation spell, right? So, but I just look back and like I've written many articles about this. I'm just like, oh, I didn't qualify this time because I got to like, yard 97.
Yeah.
And then I tapped my mana wrong. Like in one of the fun games I was playing, I literally did the same thing where I'm like, I set up this sequence where I cast 10 cards over 2 turns or whatever. And I'm like, here's all my mana. And I'm like, oh, the land that I left untapped was an Adarkar Waste. And I'm looking at the reanimate in my hand. I'm like, all my lands tapped for every fucking color, but I left them an Adarkar Waste, right?
Yeah, this reminds me of the time I didn't snap Michael J's Grim Lavamancer and let him activate it on his upkeep.
So like there's but that was like, this is burning me right now where I'm like, because SBB beat me 2-0 and his deck is outstanding against me, especially after sideboarding. He already starts with Chain and Swords, and he adds Meddling Mage, right? Like he's got a lot of stuff, but like I gave up game 1 and I would have been on the play in game 3, and could have had another belt, but like I'm so like emotional about this. I know it's like a stupid like 2-1 instead of a 3-0 at League.
Yeah,
but
it eats you alive. You're like, I left equity on the table.
I just want to play Breakfast again. And so the only reason I even played Breakfast, right? So I was just like, I don't think I'm good at this deck. Like I'm clearly not, right? Like I gave up 100% win draw to throw away, right? So I'm not good at it, but the kind of things that I'm very good at, which is like resource management and stuff like that, is like the opposite of what you need to be good at if you're good at Breakfast, right? Breakfast is about the person who kept the Priest of Titania hand against SWB at Bearded is not a Breakfast player. Breakfast is about tapping all of your mana, going for the most premium hands, Cabal therapying yourself when your opponent's tapped out on turn 2, right? Like finding these tiny mana windows where you can resolve a spell, right? Like, and so I'm not good at it. The reason that I did it was the off chance that I win, people might put Breakfast in my range for the top 8. So I'm like, I'm not fucking playing Breakfast in the top 8. This deck is not a deck that I'm good at, right? Although it is an outstanding deck, especially if you're on the play for the entire top 8. But like, I'm like, if I win, they're going to see that I'm going to be on the play. This is going to be so good. But like now I just really want to play it. And I'm like, damn it, I should have won. And, I think, I guess maybe if you practice enough, you get good at it. But you said like Flint Espo would not have lost that game, right? Like that's
of course not. Yeah.
Yeah, I won the first 4. But I mean, it's a cool deck. I think it's an outstanding deck. And it's another deck that nobody plays, but I think it's an outstanding deck. But it is incredibly punishing if you're not familiar with stuff. Like I didn't even think about. Like, I've been thinking about nothing else for the last 2 days. Right. I'm like, I should have just put 2 fucking duress.
The duress is That's definitely an interesting line.
Like I can't lose. The only possibility for losing is if he has 6 land in play, casts Factor Fiction, and turns over both a Swords to Plowshares and a Chain of Vapor. If I put two duress in my hand, that's the only line that can happen that I can lose. Right?
I think that Breakfast is definitely interesting because it's playing into a little bit of what I'm saying, which is that I think that Dreadnought is getting substantially worse as the presence of goblins and burn declines. But that just begs the question. It's like, what's the next thing going to be? Like, what are we going to do now? Like, do you think, okay, sorry, I'm sputtering. The format is just like a lot more interesting and balanced now, right?
So
because
let me respond I think what you're trying to say, right? I think Breakfast is Dreadnought. That's actually the thing that I think, right? When you're just like, instead of Dreadnought Stifle or Dreadnought Vision Charm, you just have Worldly Tutor. If you have Worldly Tutor, you win on turn 3, right? Like, or you're just like, you just go like, Nomad's Cephalid Illusionist is the same as Dreadnought Stifle. except if you resolve it, you always win that turn, right? Like people just don't understand this. Where like if I do this, you need to, and if I do this and I have 3 mana in play, you can't win anymore. Like why? I might have X, Y, and Z. I'm like, I'm gonna cast all the Cabal therapies in my deck for free, and then I'm gonna kill you, right? And so until you do it to them, then they're like, oh, I saved my interaction for this. I'm like, no, you didn't, right? Then you have like this other line, which is you just cast a Hermit Druid, and if they don't kill it, you just organize your deck in a way that you always
I mean,
win
I
the
think
next
it's like
turn.
interesting because I feel like the thing that made like I don't know, it's hard to think of in terms of the nature of the deck, right? Because Cephalid Breakfast is a straight combo deck, right? Dreadnought is like a combo deck that also could do this other thing, and like this other thing made it really good against a bunch of stuff. So it definitely leads me to wonder, like, okay, where exactly are we at with the breakfast deck, where it's like, okay, you're running into a Tormod's Crypt is kind of like,
No, so unless it's in the main deck. So this is the real edge. Like, so I was talking to Andy about this, was one of the reasons I was on Breakfast initially. It's just like everybody is loaded with cards to interact with Dreadnought, right? Whether they're seals or Xantid Swarms or Swords to Plowshares or Overloads, Mogs, Salvages, or Naturalizes, okay? Or Abeyances, Orem's Chance. They have a million things that stop you from beating them with your plan A. By comparison, people who are hyper prepared for a deck like Breakfast have 2 Tormod scripts. Most people have straight up nothing. Unless they have the card specifically Lava Dart, right? Which is 1 mana to kill 2 1/1 creatures. They're just trading 1 for 1 with you. If they ever stop trading 1 for 1 with you against your like 12 must counter 1/1s and like, I don't know, 115 tutors, like besides which you just reanimate one of your 1/1s and kill them, right? Like you don't have to reanimate the Suture Clue, you just reanimate a 1/1 and kill them, right? Like besides that, like the most aggressive people have 2 Tormod scripts. I beat 2 Tormod scripts and play multiple times on Thursday, right? Like that's the, like I just worldly tutored for Utabi Orangutan and cast it. And then that Utabi Orangutan became a Cabal therapy to get his days, right? Like that, and like that's just what the deck does in a sideboarded game. If everybody is playing 4 Tormod scripts, I think that it becomes a different story, and it's still not even that bad. Like I won a game where I was just like, I'm just gonna hardcast a 1/1 Terravore,
well,
and if there's ever a situation that he's in a fight,
it's important. It's important to point out that like the Tormod's Crypts might be coming out of a deck that doesn't give you time to Damery's Call for a Tabi Orangutan, right? So it's like if it's Elves or Goblins with that Tormod's Crypt, they might be able to just use that to buy enough time for them to create the kill condition, right?
The one thing that is annoying is the splash damage on Curse Totem. So it's Tormod's Crypts and Curse Totems, right? But like,
well, Curse Totem is not seeing that much play.
The same cards are good against both, right? So the other thing that I found to be really compelling, and I was just like, I called up Flint this week. I'm like, why do you even play Flaring Pain, right? Because there's a Flaring Pain in Artie's sideboard.
Yeah,
I feel like that could be a lot of other things, and I ended up playing the Flaring Pain, but it could be like a third Ray of Revelation. Like the ability to just 0 mana tutor for any sideboard card is fucking insane, right? Like it costs 0 mana and you have whatever sideboard card you want on demand. And that's the deck is really insane. And so it is obviously exploitable, but it's not currently being exploited, right? Like I think that it has massive matchup advantage against a shit ton of the decks that I like.
Well, I mean, Andy took this deck to the Bearded 1K that I played, and he just didn't make top 8. So, there's probably a little bit more going on than just like, you know, it crushes. I mean, he did say it made some mistakes, right? But
I think it's difficult to play on for two reasons. One of them is I just don't have the reps, right? Like I have countless reps with burn. You know, I have a lot of reps with goblins, but I just don't have the reps. Like I didn't even see the double duress line until after I lost the game, right? And then that's one. But then the second thing is, if the metagame just looks a little bit different, then breakfast is quite bad, right? But it's not just that it crushes. I'm just saying, like, most of the things that you say about Dreadnought are very applicable to breakfast, except for breakfast wins outright instead of having to play another 3 turns.
Right.
And,
I mean, I'm just more curious of like its ability to beat nonsense, right? Because if you happen to lose to nonsense, or even like borderline nonsense, like I'm going to be real, like the blue-white Tidestill deck is on my nonsense radar. I'm just kind of like...
I mean, we played a lot of sideboarded games. The fact that SWV has Meddling Mage on top of Chain Swords makes it very difficult.
Oh, man.
And he has Humility.
Never mind. Like, I'm back. Meddling Mage. I forgot Meddling Mage was in the deck sideboard. I was like, Meddling Mage is so good.
So that's the thing. So I'm like, I have Crippling Fatigue Gitu Slinger in my deck. I'm like, do I also have to have room for Ray of Revelation for
answer is yes.
Yeah, so like that his spread of different sideboard cards is all different types, right? And he starts out with it as a deck with both Chain and Swords, which are probably literally the 2 worst cards for you. And yet I think that it is favorable in game 1. Because of the all you have to do is assemble the 2-card combo, and it's lots
of decks go into game 1 against blue-white control being favored. Is such as the nature of blue-white control. Yeah, like the deck is designed to beat like cards. Like it's like it has Wrath of God in the main deck, Wrath of God Humility in the main deck, right? So it's mostly like a deck that's pre-sideboarded to beat like creature mid-range decks, and then sideboards in
6 years ago.
Yeah, and then it sideboards into it has Tide now, so then it beats creature mid-range deck or average mid-range deck or like over leveraged like combo decks that can't beat counter spells, which is just
but it's like not even that good against burn and goblins, right? Like that's the weird thing about it. It's not that good against elves. Like it can beat all of these decks.
I do not think it is. I mean, I beat the deck with my like band survival list. Okay,
I'm just saying it's not good against any of those.
Blue-white Tide still top-aided LobsterCon. So and it was 2-0-1 in the hands of SWB and Bill Ellis. So clearly there's something going on there. But man, do I like. We just watched on Duress Crew coverage this deck just like have a circle of protection in play and then just like slowly lose to a curse scroll after casting AK for like 2 and like
I mean, how many times have I said nobody loses to a fucking circle? You need at least 2 things.
You always need 2 things, yeah.
So
I mean, you need 3 things in this instance, right? Because even if you had like warmth or chill, even if you had chill, because the burn player had
eventually lose if you don't close the game.
The person had plenty of lands in play to get over chill and under their like curse scroll so they could activate.
When I beat you at the volleyball 1K, how many chills did you have in play? Did you have 3 chills in play?
I don't remember. I mean, it was like I'm pretty sure it was like 1 and then the second followed, but it was like the second followed when the battlefield was already out of control.
So like you were so low in life. Like I'm trying to remember. You had I feel like you had certainly at least 1 chill. I think it was multiple chills.
Yeah.
And then you get in. And it took me forever to cast the Jackal Pup I killed you.
Yeah. It's right? like that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's hard to beat burn. Well, Breakfast is the new best deck in the format. You heard it here first.
I'm just saying, like, it has a lot of the traits that would make for a best deck. It's amazing on the play. If you get it literally has a 2-card I win. It has a 1-card I win combo unopposed, right? If you're playing its elves on the play and they don't have a Tangle Wire on turn 2, you win 100% of the time. They have no ability to interact with that draw.
I can dig it. I mean, don't get me wrong. Right? Like I think that the deck is exciting and interesting. It presents an interesting angle. I don't know if it I think it's like interesting to think about how it's attacking the other decks. So we'll see how it shakes out.
I don't think I'm good at this deck. That's the thing that I would say is like the biggest thing. Like I would play these games and I just get so frustrated where like, you know, you had to it's like not a good mana deck, right? Like I had a bunch of we played test games where I'm just like, my lands tapped for the wrong fucking colors. I would win on turn 3 if my lands tapped for the right colors, right? Like, but that's part of the experience. Like you know, you don't have only City of Brass.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think we should call it there. I'm excited to see the future of Breakfast. We're all looking. I mean, honestly, this is like, I think the what was driving the discussion or driving the thinking out loud for me was knowing that Dreadnought feels like it's in a weird place, and going into the last big tournament that I played, Dreadnought was an obvious North Star, right? It was just obvious that.
What's the last big tournament you played? You're kind of bearded. Oh,
I guess bearded counts, but I retconned that. So at LobsterCon, Dreadnought was the best deck. Lots of people were going to play Dreadnought, which meant lots of people were going to play decks that we weren't sure could beat Dreadnought, but they were going to try. So we had Dreadnought number 1, Goblins number 2, which kind of like gave us like this picture that I think was at least somewhat predictable. I don't think I would have put Goblins at number 2. I still think Burn would have been number 2, but there was a lot of reliable things about LobsterCon, which meant that which opened the door for, you know, the success of the Elves players and the Enchantress players. Going into this next tournament, now it feels like Dreadnought doesn't have that status anymore.
Just stop. We're gonna podcast sometime this week, probably Tuesday. We're gonna know what happens at the dress crew this weekend, and we will use that as our jumping off point for Sacred Torch.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't envy the dress crew people, like the people who are playing this 107 player regional, because I'm sure they've been having this problem. But that's my point. I think that Premodern is currently in like ripe for a transition into the next thing, whatever it is. Maybe it's the Breakfast Premodern. Maybe Terrageddon will finally disappear as a deck. Maybe Burn will disappear as a deck.
That's when Terrageddon will be good again, right? Like,
yeah, of course.
Ban everything until Terrageddon is good.
Look, I mean, it needs to be said, you know, a deck is good if multiple people can play it and succeed, right? If Terrageddon comes back down to this level where it's just like 1 or 2 guys are playing it and they're sort of like doing their thing, then it's no longer a metagame factor. I would safely say right now that I do not view Terrageddon as a metagame factor, and I'll like leave it at that. It's a fine deck. Like I the way that I'm talking about it probably is underselling it substantially, but I do think that it needed to get taken down a peg, because like this was like literally like I would no longer consider it tier 1. I'll put it that.
All right, love Spike Colony.
All right, love Spike Colony.